consequences of conflict. Yes, you cannot say you would have a serene, calm environment in an environment of conflict, struggle, violence. No. So whenever there is conflict, there is always suspicion. Everyone suspects the other. The environment is not conducive. It's always tense, as if the heavens are going to fall. So whenever there is conflict, there is no progress. There is no development. Development cannot succeed in an environment of conflict and violence. So that is why, for development to thrive, we must eschew conflict and of course the attendant violence. Now, how do we resolve conflict? And that will be captured under conflict resolution. Yes, the first thing to do to resolve a conflict is to listen to the two parties. Yes, Mr. A says that Mr. B has insulted him. And because of the insult, Mr. A slaps Mr. B. And Mr. B thinks that the weight of the slap cannot be compared to the weight of the verbal insult. And Mr. B slaps Mr. B A back to equalize it. A third party comes and begins to say, Mr. A, what happened? He insulted me. Mr. B, why did you insult him? I never meant to insult him. And he threw words at him, and he concluded that it was an insult. And so he slapped me. So what did he do next? I slapped him back to equalize the first slap. The problem has ensued. So what do you need to do? You, the arbiter or the third party, would have to listen to both sides. It would be very bad if you came into a circumstance like that and asked Mr. A, after asking Mr. A, you conclude and pass your judgment only after having heard from Mr. A, without having to listen to the other side of the story. So the first way to resolve a conflict is to listen to both sides attentively with a view to providing or preferring a solution. The next way to resolve a conflict too is to make sure that you come up with a solution that is win-win. Not a solution that makes A feel better and makes B feel insulted. So you must map out a solution that will make the two parties involved in the conflict to go home smiling. So, before you resolve a conflict, you must of course get to the root of it. Because for every smoke, there is a fire. You must first of all study the reason for the conflict is the smoke. The fire could be the reason. The reason Mr. A just slapped Mr. B may not just be an immediate offense. It could be something that has been brewing in the heart of Mr. A for many years. So the person who is an arbiter or a mediator is supposed to dig into the past, establish the foundation for the reason of what is happening presently. That way it becomes easy to resolve the conflict permanently. So I've mentioned a number of factors. Understand the conflicting issue, listen to both sides, provide a solution that is a win-win one. Peace. What is peace? I'm sure you can already guess what I mean by peace. It is a state or period in which there is no war or struggle. It's not absolute absence of war. At least there's no prolonged war or struggle. An occurrence of harmony characterized by the lack of violence, conflicting behaviors, and freedom from fear and violence. So when there is no conflict, when there is no violence, when everywhere is calm, there is no struggle, there is no war, then one can say that there is peace. Of course, granted, there is no absolute peace. It is not possible to say that every conflicting issue and war in all of its manifestation, struggle, violence, and all of that are totally out of the society. It's not possible. But when these things are not there in the great proportion, and everyone appears to be going about their businesses without fear of violence, then one can say that such a society at that point in time is enjoying peace. Okay, why do we need peace? We need peace for a whole number of reasons. First, we need peace for development. Like I said not too long ago, development cannot happen, cannot progress, cannot come into place when we have violence. Development is allergic to violence. Yes, in an area or society where violence is thriving, development takes its leave. So for us to develop, we certainly need peace. Yes. The next reason we need peace is to maintain a healthy relationship. If there is no peace, you cannot be in a healthy relationship with the man next door. When there is war, you are busy running for your life with all your load, your family. You don't have time for your neighbors. But when there is war, would you assemble under a tree and discuss moonlight tales? Certainly no. When during the Civil War, Daddy and Mommy told us that people were constantly on the run. In fact, the sight of a bird triggers run. It's as if the entire body was set on a default. That you see any wing, even if it's a butterfly, anything that has a wing, you see them running with their heels touching the back of their head. Yes. No relationship. You don't even know your next door neighbor. Do you even have time to stay in a particular place for more than a week? You are constantly moving like a scalar quantity with a direction, no magnitude, with magnitude rather. You don't have direction. You keep on moving because of your life. So, when there is violence, when there is war, there is you can't maintain a healthy relationship. Sometimes you even lose your immediate family members. Sometimes you find out that you are the only person surviving. You don't even know your mother, you don't know your father, you don't know your brothers and your sisters. You're busy running for your life. So, you cannot maintain a healthy relationship in an environment of violence. So for that, we certainly need peace. And I was briefly looking into just 2 questions. What is conflict? I told you that conflict is a situation of open and prolonged struggle. Now, can you mention 3 types of conflict? I talked about interpersonal conflict, intrapersonal conflict, intergroup conflict, intragroup conflict, and the rest of them. I'm sure you remember all of these, don't you? Okay, that's wonderful. The next topic is the interdependence of nations. I'm sure you know what I have in mind with this. The interdependence of nations is an attempt to come together and attempt by all nations, possibly all nations, to come together and derive mutual benefits from one another. Nations are interdependent. No one nation has everything. Nation A must need the assistance of Nation B. If not for any other thing, the proximity of sometimes 2 nations will make them depend one on the other. For instance, Nigeria politically belongs to the United Nations Organization and of course to the OAU. Nigeria also is a member of the Economic Community of West African States, and that's for economic purposes. So one way or the other, nation depends on the other. Why do nations need to depend one on the other? We'll come to that under purpose of interaction. The first is economic reasons. Like I said earlier, no one nation has everything. That is why Nigeria today could go abroad to import some of the raw materials it needs to make shoes, for instance. And after making such shoes, it will need equally a market to sell this product. So Nigeria will need countries like the US, like the UK, name them, where it goes to sell some of their finished goods. And countries like this may need some raw materials like palm fruit, palm frond, and all of that here in Nigeria, with which they go back to their land to make some raw materials and to make finished goods. Come back to Nigeria sometimes and dispose of these goods. So, for economic reasons, nations interact among themselves. The next is for political reasons. Yes, at least to protect territorial boundaries and to safeguard their integrity. So nations, one way or the other, depend on the other politically. Borrow political ideas, test run them, and if they work, implement such political ideas. The next reason for interaction among nations is social-cultural reasons. Yes, if it is possible that nations share cultural values, then the lines between nations will be blurred. We begin to know each other very well. We begin to know the reason for our culture, why these people dress the way they dress, why these people wear cap the way they do, why these people are almost bare-bodied when they walk around town. We get to share cultural values. And when these cultural values are shared, we come to love each other the more. We come to appreciate why people do things the way they do. And when we come to appreciate each other, then we have less reasons to become violent against one another. And therefore, we'll be able to reduce to the barest minimum the attempts to launch attack against one another. So these are the 3 main reasons nations interact one with the other. Economic reasons, political reasons, and finally, social